Retweeting.
And welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Cripple Connection podcast. As always, my name is Cody Lashley. You can find me on Twitter at CodyLax, CODYLAC. And boy, do we have a show today, dude. Talking about The Last of Us 2. Me and my partner in crime, Jeffrey Redmond, have a ton to say and talk about. Jeffrey, what's up, man?
Oh, I can't even begin to. Oh.
Have you and I ever been so conflicted before we started the show and like had so much that we wanted to say going into this? Like, we have so many thoughts, so many emotions. We're gonna break down everything in The Last of Us 2. Everything from the story to the backlash to the gameplay to the accessibility options for disabled people. We're going to be covering everything in today's show of the Cripple Connection podcast. If you like our content, hit the like button, help us get seen by more people. Hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell every time we go live, which is either Fridays or Mondays, but we're trying to make it Fridays. Anyway, any damn way, bro. Jeffrey, I almost don't even know where to start. So, since we didn't really know where to start, let's just do one small news piece and then we'll jump into it. Mixer is no more, bro. Did you even give a shit?
No, I've never even used the platform. I always used Twitch anyway. So, not a big surprise there.
Yeah, it wasn't a big... Dude, and as I said before the show, Microsoft is still rich as hell. So who cares? Is this another failed venture? It sucks for all the streamers that now, that had built a platform there and they were trying to grow it now to know that the platform that they've been working with is going away and they're not even going to be able to work with it anymore. So it feels bad for them. But, at the same time, there's other way better platforms with built-in fan bases that Mixer just didn't have. And they weren't... I saw some crazy numbers about during this quarantine, all of the websites' traffic for their gaming department, like Twitch, YouTube, all the streaming sites were up like 80 to 100%.
Yeah.
Mixer was only up 0.02% in viewers. At the time when everyone else was fucking doing nothing but watching games, no one gave a damn about Mixer and what they were doing. So, and kudos to Ninja and Shroud for being extra multimillionaires overnight, even though they already were. But anyway, dude, that's not why any of us are here. No. Last of Us 2. And,
oh my god.
Oh man, Jeffrey and I kind of have to even wonder where to start with this one. So, by the way, this is the last warning that you will receive. If you have not picked up The Last of Us 2, and you have not, or you have, but you haven't beaten the game, this is going to be a full spoiler review. We're talking every main event, every plot twist, the ending to the beginning, all the juicy bits. That's what we're going to talk about. And boy, is there a lot to talk about. So we're just going to jump right into it. And I'm going to start by saying this. And we're going to address all the backlash too. From the critics that loved it and praised it to the fans that are doing nothing but shitting all over it. We're going to talk about all of it. But I'll start by saying this. I do not remember the last time I had so much fun and emotional attachment playing a video game. And the last time, which it wasn't too long ago, that I felt so emotionally invested in a video game was God of War 3. and the relationship between Kratos and Atreus. But the story being told here, and the violence that it pushes on you, and I do understand that it pushes it on you. It's not a game where you get to make choices and decisions on your own, and a lot of people I feel are kind of knocking it for that as well. But whatever, it's a violent video game that forces a lot of violence on you, and by the end of that game, I remember being like in tears almost. Like, how am I supposed to feel right now?
I cried like a baby, and I don't remember the last time I cried during. There are moments in video games when I've teared up, but I have never ugly cried over a video game. Well, this is the first time that has happened. And I have never been so completely conflicted in terms of just everything, man. It's insane. This game is brutally honest. Although it is an apocalyptic tale about, an infection and zombies and stuff, like most apocalyptic fiction, it is about the human character. And I think this is the first time in a video game that the consciousness of a human character and what it means to be human and the rawness of just primal urges, is really, really talked about in a realistic sense.
In a realistic sense, and it also kind of touches on this is what humanity has been. This is what war is. This is what gang violence is. You kill my people, I'm coming kill yours. That's how the world is, and in a world that is seeing this crazy pandemic where everyone's dying, it doesn't seem far-fetched. It seems like this is what a post-apocalyptic world is. It's cutthroat. It's different. Like, it's like Democrats and Republicans, but if they had armed factions.
Essentially,
like that's really what it is. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I'm sorry.
And again, we really don't know how. Jeffrey and I have been debating on how we're going to format this show and what we even want to talk about first. So let's kind of do this. Let's touch on the gameplay, and that's going to inevitably get into some story features. But we'll talk a little gameplay and story at the same time. We'll talk about the disability options that are available for everyone to use. That Naughty Dog just went way above board with, and they have set the video game standard to how to make your video game accessible for such a wide variety of people. Like, Naughty Dog is the industry standard in this right now, and what they've done with that game. So let's touch on the gameplay for a minute. And now I'm going to refer to my partner Jeffrey. Jeffrey, did you have fun playing this game, and what did you enjoy doing in playing The Last of Us 2?
I enjoyed playing the game. I will say this, and it's not really a criticism per se, but it is a third-person shooter, and it really isn't any kind of mechanics that we haven't seen before. It's third-person action shooting with some stealth elements to get you, from certain areas to certain areas. So the gameplay itself isn't anything groundbreaking, but it is very well done. It is very well polished.
Yes.
Going into a situation, okay, I can approach this either stealthily or I can go loud as I want, assuming I have the resources to do so. Crafting is a big part of the game. You pick up resources as you go around in these environments, and you can craft, certain ammunition or, silencers for your pistols, whatever you do. So, but again, like I said, it's not really anything we haven't seen in previous games, but it is definitely polished
it doesn't try and reinvent the wheel. It doesn't even try and reinvent who it is, like what it is as a game. Essentially you as you're playing, and again, we'll kind of get through some of the main character beats, but especially early on, playing as Ellie, It feels just like a Last of Us game. A lot of it is very similar. I found that the earlier aspects of the game, like when you and Dina are roaming around Seattle, it's very open world. And it kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy 13 in that sense, and how the opening portion of the game was actually very linear, and then it opened up. This was like the reverse of that. Early on, it gives you the ability to kind of roam around this abandoned Seattle and see how the growth has overtaken everything, but it lets you stock up and go into buildings, and it really kind of lets you roam around. And so I'll say this: it's once you know how to navigate the world and kill the enemies, it's really easy to do. And I can understand that if you chose to play this game one way or the other. So if you decided to play it as a stealth assassin or just a run and gun type of gameplay, you could basically do either of those. And once you got and once you got the handle of it, you could kind of do whatever you wanted. The way this game didn't get repetitive for me was the fact that there was so much versatility in how I was able to fuck these people up, man. So when early on, you pretty much realize that, especially when you have Ellie's shiv, that you can sneak up behind just about anyone and kill them, and you can pretty much do that the rest of the game if you want, for the most part. But whenever you start to craft brand new items, and you're able to get like the crossbow, and you know how to hit put silencers on your pistol from Coke cans. Like whenever you hit those early headshots early on, man, it felt good, dude. Like, you feel like a fucking assassin, and you're on a mission, and again, especially with Joel dying early on, the way that he did, and as brutally as he did, it amps you, the player, up to be like, oh, I'm going to fucking tear up everyone. I am going to become a killing machine. And I felt that it did a good job in putting you in the position of an angry, enraged person that has a plethora of ways to get revenge on these people. And it rewards you for being violent. And I feel like that's a lot of the criticism of the game, but at its aspect, when you talk about a Naughty Dog video game, it doesn't matter if you're talking Uncharted or The Last of Us. You are going to mow down swaths of people. Like, you are going to become the Terminator.
But for the first time in a Naughty Dog game, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Nathan Drake, and I love Uncharted. But this is the first time I felt that it was justified. Like, because because I'm a big fan of the original Last of Us, and I loved Joel and Ellie as characters, and to see Joel die in the way that he did. So let's, for people who don't know what The Last of Us, I mean, if they don't, they haven't played the previous game or whatever, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do want to make things abundantly clear.
Sure.
So there's this virus, there's this infection, typical zombie shit, right? Well,
actually, it kind of isn't. It isn't a virus. It's a mold spore. It's cordyceps mushrooms, which are actually real, and they actually do take over animals and insects and shit. But they basically now they take over people as well.
Yeah. So in the first game, you control this man named Joel, and he ends up losing his daughter. His daughter gets gunned down by the military. So he, years later, is involved with this group called the Fireflies, and remember that name because it's going to come back.
Yes.
They're involved with this group called the Fireflies, and his main mission through the first game was to escort this young teenage girl named Ellie to the Firefly main base. Turns out that she is immune to the virus, so she's the only person known to be immune. Okay? Well, they travel all the way across wherever they're going, and they finally get to the Firefly encampment. Well, Joel learns that in order to cure this virus, Ellie is going to have to be operated on and subsequently killed. Okay?
Yes, in order to make a treatment vaccine.
Yes. So Joel uh, goes renegade and basically kills all the Fireflies
Yes, that we're
and
gonna kill her.
saves Ellie's life, but thereby damning the rest of humanity.
And that's how the
Okay.
first game ends. That's how you
Yeah.
end The Last of Us 2. And the
Yeah.
game opens up kind of giving you that overview and that,
Yeah, it does.
yeah, right. And it kind of, it catches you up on things. And see,
Mm-hmm.
this is where we can kind of start to get into it now.
Yeah.
Because they did in my opinion, and tell me, this is what I kept thinking, Jeffrey, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a long time ago, but I felt that it's similar enough to make the comparison. You remember
Sure.
in Metal Gear Solid 2, where everyone thought, oh, okay, it's another Metal Gear. I'm going to be playing Snake the whole time.
The bait
You,
and
you
switch.
played the demo as Snake the whole time.
Yep.
Only when you get the game and you realize that you're going to play what feels like most of the game as a whole nother person that isn't the antagonist. They pull a bait
Yep.
and switch on you, and they do the same thing in this game because what they do and what people have been criticizing, and I understand where the criticism comes from, but
I do too.
so they let you essentially play more than 10 hours as Joel's killer. This girl named
Yes.
Abby, who comes from another group called the WLF, they find
Mm-hmm.
Joel and they murder her in front of Ellie and they let Ellie go. But later
Yes.
on in the game, you actually start to play Abby. And then not only do you play Abby after she's killed Joel, but before you start to play her, she just kills Jesse, the Asian male character that's in the game with Ellie and
Yeah.
Dina. So
Yeah.
everyone is freaking out. I don't want to play this girl. I love Joel so
Mm-hmm.
much. How would you
Right.
do that to Joel? And one, by the way, and we kind of just got done talking about this with Ellie too. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Ellie or Abby. You become like a murdering machine. So
Yeah.
let me defend Naughty Dog for a second.
Yeah.
It is
Please do.
fine to kill Joel the way they did because Joel
Yes.
was not a saint himself.
No.
In The Last
As
of
I
Us
said.
2, in The Last of Us 2, he becomes like a stark raving killer in order to save
Yeah.
Ellie.
Yeah. 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 Um. And that's the thing. And this is um this is something. Well, it's true for all stories, but specifically apocalyptic fiction. Um. It it often comes down to who you start with. So a lot of people are defending Joel and Ellie because they started there in the first game, right? But let's flip the script. What if you had been playing as Abby in the first game and
Right.
you were suddenly forced to play Joel and Ellie in the second one? You wouldn't like that either. So the key thing here is a lot of people tend to side with the side that they started on first. And
Right.
that's just typical of anything. But what this game does brilliantly is it shows both sides and how both sides are terrible.
And
But
honestly, I feel like, and tell me if you agree or not, I feel like it was a decision made. Like, they knew that they were going to alienate a
yeah,
huge part of their fans when you're forced to play this chick that you really have no
yeah,
context on, and she just murders two characters that you know and love. And then you're
yeah,
forced to play her. Like, Naughty Dog made a creative decision knowing that there was going to be backlash. And what I feel, and this is where I differ, and I know that you and I differ from a lot of the people making criticisms about it, is that I actually came to identify with Abby. I didn't
I
have
did
this.
too.
I didn't have this mindset going through the game the entire time. Like, oh, I hate this bitch. I don't want to be playing her. Like, I did miss Ellie, and I was wondering like when I would be able to play her again. But
Right.
the game actually got me to care about her, and I love how interrupt me if I get too long winded, Jeffrey.
No, you're good.
But
Go,
like,
go, go.
so when you look at her design, right? They made
Yeah.
a very clear effort to butch her up. Like, her arms
Oh yeah.
are
Oh
fucking
yeah.
swole. She is
Hmm.
jacked, and I don't know what this says about me, but I felt like the fact that she was more masculine, it kind of made me as a man identify with her more. Cause I want my fucking arms to look like that. Are you
Right.
Are you kidding me? Like, yeah,
she was jacked.
yeah, she's jacked, but at the same time, like this game definitely plays with the gender norms and stuff like
definitely.
that. There's a trans character later on in the game, but she is just a very kind of masculine straight girl, and
Right.
and over time. So with that in context, this girl is rough. She saw her father, or she didn't see her father, but her father was the doctor that was going to operate on Ellie.
He was the main surgeon.
Yeah, Joel murders the main surgeon in order to save Ellie. So, her knowing this, she's been this tough, strong girl that feels as though she needs to be the protector of people. So she is a little bit stoic. She isn't the best, most vibrant personality of anyone else in the game. But as you go on, it's like you start to feel for her. I just go on that, Jeffrey. But I just felt overall, and I'll delve back into it more after you talk. But I just felt overall that I had more of an interest, or that they did a good job in such a short amount of time at getting me to forget about her as the murderer who killed someone that we know and love, and someone that was just on the other side of this epic revenge tale.
And that's the thing, right? Like none of them were justified in any of the actions that they did. Like they're all horrible. But the thing is, like, it depends on what point of view you're coming from. Like you said, Abby's father gets murdered by Joel, and she's out for revenge, just as Ellie is out for revenge for them killing Joel. So in a lot of ways, they are actually two sides of the same coin, and in fact, a lot of the story beats between the two actually match up quite a bit. There's a flashback scene with Ellie, for example, where Joel takes her to a museum, right? Like a dinosaur space museum thing, because she's big into being an astronaut, and they have some bonding time or whatever. Well, on Abby's side, you've got, God, what was his name? Owen.
Oh.
And the aquarium, right? So, those two match up.
They mirror each other, definitely.
Yeah, and throughout the story, there are examples like that where they are constant mirrors of one another. And I really started to think about this after I had played it, and I'm like, these two aren't so different. Like, literally to a T almost. I mean, they're different personalities, sure, and they have different reasons, but ultimately, they're kind of the same thing, which is crazy to think about, really. But like, so that was the big thing, was the bait and switch, because a lot of games won't do that, and I want to praise Naughty Dog here again. A lot of games would have taken that out and put it in as DLC or something. You know what I mean? The fact that they put this entirely in the game in one shot is amazing. And that's kind of the thing. So throughout the game, like when you're playing as Ellie, what I call the first half of the game, you're playing as Ellie, right?
Yeah.
But then you see it from Abby's side in the second half. So the dog and all the people you butchered as Ellie, suddenly they're human beings now. Hell, I felt so bad for the damn dog.
I know. No. Okay, so then Jeffrey, and then this thing happens. Like I had this moment, which actually, by the way, let me tell you something that you might just be hearing from me, and this is the benefit of having a football fan. So as a friend, so that stadium that you go to. Like, dude, that's a damn near 1-for-1 remake of CenturyLink Field, where the Seattle Seahawks play. I mean, everything from the front to the end, like from the shape of the building. Yeah, because they're in Seattle, and that's where the Seahawks play. But In the game, they're called they're called the Orcas. But
right.
I just thought that was a fun little tidbit. But around that point in the game, where you switch over to Abby for what feels like the rest of the entire game,
because it pretty much is.
Yeah, because it pretty much is. I mean, even when you do play Ellie again, it's not very long. I mean, Ellie is even the final boss fight of her of her playthrough. So
yeah, literally, yeah.
Yeah, she's literally the final boss. But this moment happens where, so Ellie kills Mel and Owen. She's in on again, off again relationship with this guy named Owen. And Owen is actually in a relationship with another friend of hers, and they're gonna have a baby together. So, but you don't realize this until later, because at the end of Ellie's part of the story, where you're playing as her, she murders Owen and Mel, and she didn't know that Mel was pregnant. She was visibly pregnant. Now, I will say one thing, and I forget who pointed this out. I was listening to someone online. Ellie has probably murdered countless pregnant women, but it was this is the only one that was showing and like visibly present, because all the time you're just murdering men and women left and right. But anyway, you find out that she's pregnant, and obviously this weighs a little bit more because Dean is pregnant, and I get that they made the choice to do that as well.
That's another thing.
Yeah,
that's
for sure. Between
those two.
And what my point was is then you go in and you start to play Abby, and then you start learning and knowing and hearing more about and from these people that you've already fucking killed. And you know this, and it forces you to kind of interact with them and empathize with them and all this other shit, and then Tommy murders the Hispanic guy that you come to know in front of her. They really.
I like too. That's
I know, and that's another mirror thing, because Abby shot Jesse right in front of her. So it's like I understand that they really had this. The two different sides of revenge are more similar than you would even know, but.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Jeffrey, one of the most heartbreaking points for me was when it's towards the end, when you're playing with Abby and you lose her backpack. Dude, I was so kitted up at that point in time, Jeffrey. I had the crossbow, the flamethrower, all the machine guns. I had upgraded so many different weapons. To lose that pack, bro, I was heartbroken, man. I was I felt more powerful and at my strongest in the game when I was playing as Abby as opposed to Ellie.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I mean, it depends on how you upgrade them, because you can, upgrade characters different ways, and you can upgrade weapons different ways. I just had more fun with Abby's kit. I felt that the crossbow was much more accurate than the longbow was.
Oh, and it's so satisfying. It's so satisfying, too.
I mean, I felt like a female version of Daryl Dixon.
Yeah, man, dude, come on. We're Daryling it up out here, man. That was awesome.
I don't know. There's something, and she got, I don't know. There was something much more enjoyable about Abby, which is weird because everybody else is saying the exact opposite, but I think it goes back to my point of they played Ellie and Joel first, so that's what they're used to. But, I don't know, just her kit and her whole story was interesting to me because I didn't know it yet. Like, I already knew Ellie and Joel's backstory, So to see this from a different angle, not only from a different angle, but such a well-realized angle, and drawing comparisons between everybody and everything, and just seeing how, and I'm gonna get flamed on the internet for saying this, but Ellie's a damn bitch. She is the biggest bitch I have ever come across in video games, and I can't believe I'm saying that, and people are gonna kill me.
Go.
But Ellie, okay, first off, look, Joel lied to her and said that she was one of many people who were immune to the virus, right?
Right.
So throughout her time with Joel, after the first game, she's been relatively cold to him
Yeah.
because because she realized, hey, I shouldn't be alive, and the rest of humanity should be fine, which I understand. I mean, that is a heavy burden. Do not get me wrong, but I mean, just Joel was trying to, do the right thing, or at least what he thought of in his head is the right thing, and she's just a bitch, and I'm just like, at some point you gotta. I mean, this man put his life on the line for you. At some point, you have to accept what has happened, and not only that, but he interjects several times. Like, there's this part in the game, and it's alluded to at the very beginning of the game, but you don't really understand it until the end, when you see the actual scene itself. But somebody calls Ellie a dyke, and it becomes this whole thing, and I think his name was Sam, I believe, calls her that, and Joel
you start the game and she's calling him a bigot and trying to give her a peace offering, but she's like, fuck that guy, like, I don't care.
Yeah. But and that I understand too. I mean, because a lot of people, especially gay people, go through that. So I understood it from that point of view as well. But like, the biggest thing for me with Ellie wasn't the fact that, she did all these things. It was the fact that she had an opportunity to live a great life.
Yeah.
And her lust for revenge screwed her entire life up. So about, I'd say, 3/4 of the way into the game, there's this scene where Ellie and her girlfriend, Dina, who was pregnant by Jesse, they're out at this farmhouse. They've got a great life. They're raising Jesse's kid together. Like, it's a whole, wonderful thing. I mean, she could have had a great life. But instead, she is so blinded by her rage that she decides to go after Abby again.
Yeah.
And not only that, but, I mean, this might be jumping too far forward, but at the end of the game, she doesn't.
Okay, let's get to the end in a minute, but I kind of want to piggyback off of what you just said, right? So okay. I don't even know if I finished my point from earlier about Joel's death, right? So
yes.
the two things. One, not only was he not above being killed in a manner like that, but like they're saying, oh, you don't kill off a character like that way. One, bullshit.
He kind of deserved it.
Like, and it's not even about deserve, man. One of the reasons why Game of Thrones as a show was so popular was because of how gruesomely it killed off the main characters. Because that's real fucking life. And by the way, so and this kind of jumps forward to even after the end. Like, this is the ending, but at the very end of the game, when you're back to playing Ellie, it shows the final moment between Ellie and Joel, and the last words that she says to him before he dies is, "Man, I'll see you around," because you know what? You don't know when your last minute with your loved ones is gonna be. So that is how it would happen. You're mad at each other and you think everything's cool, and then fucking tragedy strikes, and Joel gets his head bludgeoned in. There isn't some grand writer that's supposed to be there and crafting these perfect soliloquies on how people die. That's not real fucking life.
It's not. And that's the other thing. Going into a little bit of Joel's character, you do learn about that final conversation. And he literally learns nothing either, because he says, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. He said I would do the same thing, causing the same cycle of violence.
And I'm like, knowing what you know now, and just, I mean, obviously he wasn't dead at that point, so, but you know what I mean.
Jeffrey, did you get this? Did you get that the song, the lyrics go, if I were to lose you, I would lose myself. And that's what happens. Ellie loses Joel. Yeah, Ellie loses Joel, and she loses herself and causes this fucking crazy spiral of violence that ends up coming back to hurt her.
Ultimately, it's a tale of vengeance and how vengeance can blind you and make you pretty much destroy your own life. You may even achieve what you set out to do, but in doing so, not only are you hurting other people, but you eventually hurt yourself. Because what ends up happening with Ellie is after her confrontation with Abby, who she doesn't kill, by the way, she takes pity on Abby and Tev.
Yeah,
the boy's name is?
Yeah, Tess or
Tev.
Tev. I'm forgetting right off the top of my head.
Yeah. Tev. Tev.
Yeah.
Which I want to ask you about that storyline in a minute too.
Okay.
For that. But yeah, she realizes her mistake and leaves them, but at what cost? Because when she returns to that farmhouse, where her girlfriend and the baby are supposed to be, they're gone. And we don't know what happened to them. Did they leave in a rush? Are they dead? Did they go back to, the original outpost they were at? Like, where are they? And Ellie's just left alone, and she's wandering out in the field, and that's how it ends. You don't even know the fate of her or, the ones that she's closest to.
Right.
But that's her own damn fault. Because, Dina tells her, she's like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go after her. Ellie made that choice and has to deal with the consequences for that. And I think that's a very powerful message and something that a hero or even an anti-hero in a video game really hasn't ever dealt with before, at least not to my knowledge. There are some games where I can think of a twist ending where it turns out, you're doing the wrong thing the whole time. But, that's a twist ending. But in this game, from the outset that you're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
And I think it beautifully mirrors the horror that you can cause to yourself and to those around you and to people you may think are humanless but also have lives. Because then you start to think about, Abby's point of view. And of course, Ellie doesn't know any of that, but you do. There's all the... It's a masterclass in human emotion. Is what this game really is.
And Jeffrey, let me tell you the moment when I knew that they did a good job.
Okay.
And so, by the way, and let me actually say this first. And Jeffrey, I think I might have told you this too, like in private or whatever. But like when it comes to endings, like when it comes to stories, I'm very torn on endings because so many of them I don't like. I just don't like the way they end. They're either not satisfying enough, or it's extra confusing, or it's a letdown, or it's a shameless setup to a sequel that's that's an inevitable cash grab. Like I've been so disappointed by so many endings across many different mediums in my life, whether it be
looking at you, Final Fantasy VII.
Dude, there are so many that just drop the ball at the end. It doesn't matter if you're talking about games or shows or movies or what have you.
Right.
This is legitimately one of my favorite endings of all time.
Me too.
All time.
Me
and,
too.
and it's specific to a video game. Because Jeffrey, I don't know about you, man, but in that final fight between Ellie and Abby, I lost track of who I was playing. I didn't even know whose life I'm mashing buttons for. And it's every time you land like a strike on the other one, I'm like, oh, fuck. So essentially, as a bit of an explainer, so you play as Abby, and you end up going, and you have to fight Ellie, and you end up beating Ellie, and Trev or whatever I forget the kid's Trev.
It's Tev, T-E-V.
Tev. At the end, basically, Tev guilt trips you into not killing Ellie. and then you leave her alone, and Abby's like, "Don't ever let me see you ever again."
Right,
But
and that's the other thing is she's now spared Ellie twice, because in the beginning of the game and there, and she still refuses to learn the lesson, even with Joel's. I don't understand how someone could be that blinded by rage and that stupid.
Well, and see, this is also what's kind of poetic about it, though, because as you were saying,
people do.
But Ellie made the decision, even when she has a wife and a son and a family member of her own, that vengeance, that thirst for blood, it had to be satisfied, and it had to be satisfied by Abby's blood. So she chose to walk away from all of that, and in doing so, she is the only reason that Abby ends up living. Because so they go to Santa Barbara at the end, and Abby and Tev get kidnapped by this like Hell's Angels biker gang out in California or something, and they're essentially like crucifying people on a beach. Like they're not on a cross, but they're tied up on these big ass pillars and posts. And by the time you find Abby, she's been there for over a month, and who knows like. I mean, how tortured and beaten. I mean, you know, again, they made a design choice to make Abby a real buff, kind of yoked up girl. But at the end, when you cut her down, her hair is short, she's emaciated. And the first thing that she does is she doesn't even say anything when Elliot cuts her down. She fucking goes to cut down Tev and get him off. And then... They're going to the boats to get away, and there were two boats, and Ellie could have gone her own path, but she's like, no, I'm going to fucking kill this bitch, because she has another PTSD moment where she says, Joel, and you have to fight, and you have to fight as Ellie against Abby, but it does it in a way where it's like a lot of quick time events, but it's also you moving around and attacking, but in that time, when they're in the struggles and you're having to fight for the knife and get out from under the water, it's like you're so... I was so glued to the television, dude.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
A bomb could have went off and I wouldn't have known.
So much so that I kept forgetting to dodge. I kept dying because I was like, I was so horrified by like what was going, and I was truly conflicted. I'm like, I actually like both. I know I've been shitting on Ellie a lot, but I liked Ellie as a character up until this game. Like, and I really started to think, you know, none of this is Ellie's fault. It's really Joel's fault. And I started thinking all these thoughts, you know, but thank you, Naughty Dog. And again, this was a creative decision. Thank you for not letting us pick who you controlled during that fight.
Yes.
And thank you for not having two separate endings depending on
which one you did.
This was a solid narrative game all the way through. There are no choices other than, you know, how you kill people as you go along. But, like, there's no narrative choices. There's no bullshit like, okay, you can side with this guy on this playthrough and do this on this playthrough. They had a very clear vision from the start to the end of this game. And that's one of the other things, too. They didn't even have to make a fucking sequel to this game. The Last of Us 1 stands on its own as being a standalone game. So the fact that they were able to take this and not only do it period, but do it 20 million times better than the original is just mind-blowing to me.
And dude, it's so one, let me not get ahead of myself, to piggyback on what you were saying, because you just made the best point of the whole show, I think, because in today's world, and I feel like I've said this on our show before, like there's this tendency in the industry and of gamers where every game either has to be open world and it has to be a choose your own everything, meaning you make every decision and you get to go wherever you want and you're just a kid in the candy store, blah blah blah, waving your dick around, fine. And by the way, if you want to play those types of games, they exist.
Yeah, they do.
Play Red Dead Redemption, play Cyberpunk 2077, play all the games that give you all the fucking options. Fine.
Yeah.
But I support when developers say, no, we have a story, a specific story that we want to tell. Like, imagine in the original God of Wars, if you were Kratos and it let you be merciful to people before, instead of ripping their fucking heads off, then Kratos wouldn't be the Kratos that we know and love.
That he is.
And it wouldn't have been so meaningful in God of War 3 when you see this old dude trying to distance himself from this stark raving killing machine that he used to be. It makes it more impactful. So I love...
Technically, that's God of War 4, but I digress.
4, my bad, 4. Yeah, but my point remains the same, though, is that it's more... I support when developers, as artists, want to tell a specific story with a specific ending and a specific vision, and they want you to go on that kind of ride. It's not on me or you to make up what happens.
Right.
But, like, remember Mass Effect 3? When everyone hated the ending, so then they basically had to retroactively change it. Like, dude,
it's because they gave you a choice, though. If they had a solid ending in that game, I don't think it would have been the issue. But because that's how the game is structured, they had to do it that way, which I understand. But I think this is, and there are plenty of games like this, like Heavy Rain, and then all these other games that try to be like cinematic movies. This is the first time I felt like I was playing a fucking movie, because I was, just the story in this game rivals something that would be in a Hollywood film. In fact, I want somebody to make a novel out of this. I want there to be a goddamn Last of Us 2 novel.
You know what, serious. Jeffrey? I respectfully disagree. And it's because of how good that ending was. I don't think... so, for example, and I'm really being honest. At the end, I lost track of who I was playing as.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a pivotal... there have been these discussions on YouTube and everywhere else in media. Is are video games art? And absolutely
I think
they
it
are.
does.
And they especially shine in video games when the gameplay itself opens you up to the story that you're playing.
True.
So, for example, if you're reading a novel of that, you're still going to have that impactful ending at the end of these two fighting, but you have as a video game, you have literally been both of these people. Their actions were actions that you made. So at the very end, when there's this knock down, drag out fight between these two characters that have been the protagonists, they were both the protagonist and the antagonist. That's why, in my mind, the ending was so great, because it's these two mirroring stories finally colliding and coming to a crescendo, and you having to be torn about which side you're on.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that's a great point. And I said this to you as well when I finished the game. I think I either Facebooked you or tweeted you or something. And I was like, I don't even know who the protagonist of this game is.
Yeah.
Literally, I was so torn between the two, because I'm like, they've all done horrible things. Who's the good guy here? I mean, the obvious answer is Ellie. But it's like, is she really? Because everything that she has done in this game has made me to believe otherwise. But then if you're looking at it from her point, they're both, I don't know how to, they're both completely justified in everything.
Right.
And they both have very equal points.
They both have had
sides.
Loved ones violently taken from them.
Yeah. So it's like who do you pick? And not who do you pick because you started with this character. It's who would you pick if, say, The Last of Us 1 didn't exist, okay? And you never played as Joel or Ellie. Would people be so pissed off about this? I don't think they would be. I think they would be as torn as the rest of us. I think they're just clinging on to the characters that they played in the first one, which is a fair point. Look, you can think whatever you want, but you can't deny the narrative genius that is this game. And I hate to keep saying that, but like, this is the most fully realized game in terms of character development, in terms of story, in terms of anything I think I've ever played. And I just played Xenoblade Chronicles like 2 weeks ago and said that was one of the greatest games ever. This shit blows that out of the water. And I didn't even think that was possible. But because this is such a human tale, and it's a real tale, because, I mean, forget the clickers and, the runners and the zombie aspect of it. The human nature part of it is very real, because there are people that have started wars, world wars, mind you, for much less. So, I mean, it really is the flaws of the human condition that really make this game what it is. And I would recommend that even if you don't play video games, to give this game a shot, or at least watch a cut down version of this game in movie form on YouTube, because I know it exists. You need to see this, and even if it's not physically playing it, I think the video game industry, and I think anybody who says video games aren't art or video games can't be taken seriously really needs to sit. I'm sure a film critic would have a ball dissecting this game and all the shit that goes on. So it could even be, brought in from that point of view. I just think it's a masterful story, and as a writer, I can't believe that they did what they did, and I can't believe they did it so well.
So that kind of seems like a good segue to me, because a part of the reasons why I was definitely excited about having this conversation with you today, and a big part of this conversation and discussion that I wanted to touch on is the difference between the critics' reviews and the fan reviews, because the fan reviews are in the tank, dude. Like people are mad, mad about this fucking game, right? And especially like there are videos talking about how critics, and it sucks, because even though I agree with the critics in this instance, I do agree with the notion that for a large part, and this is proof of it, whether I like it or not, most times critics and how they view art is completely separate from fan reaction and the actual reaction of the game. So just because there are these professional reviewers that either love something or shit all over it, it doesn't even touch how fans feel about that specific piece of media. And I get that. But dude, I feel like so much of the backlash to this video game has to do with shit that isn't even the video game. So
it's not even the game.
So for example, there were a bunch of leaks that came out before. I mean, a bunch of the story had been leaked before the game had been released. So a lot of people were already criticizing it and making fun of it and talking how terrible the decisions are. So I feel like people kind of made up their mind then.
Before they even played
they even played it. But, and then, this is another thing that I don't even know if you're aware of, but I wanted to get your opinion and your take on it. And this is still about the criticism, but it touches on a different topic as well. A few at the start of this year, when they still thought the release date for Last of Us 2 was going to be in May, they had put out this article about how terrible, like the culture and the amount of work that they make you do at Naughty Dog actually is. So, for example, there was a story that they put out, and this one person from Naughty Dog said that a pipe had disconnected and almost hit someone in the head, and that if that pipe would have went a little bit further to the left, like it could have been a really they could have died. But it was and they go on to make the point that it was at nighttime, and there were no people there at nighttime, because even though the building people weren't there, there was always Naughty Dog people in there working crazy hours to polish this video game. So a lot of the discussion around this now is these games are time consuming, they're money consuming, and a lot of it, Jeffrey, was to do stuff like whenever you're upgrading a weapon, for example, there's a full animation scene.
Animation for every single one of those.
Fully rendered in beautiful 4K high definition that looks incredible, but you're just watching what happens and being, oh, that's beautiful, but it doesn't actually affect, it doesn't do anything but add more time and effort onto something that just takes away from your time playing the video game. And I understand that criticism, but I don't want to get too off base though, but I feel like a lot of people are kind of taking all of these complaints and these things that they already were mad about when it comes to Naughty Dog, and they're using some of those things to unfairly judge the story. I honestly kind of feel that way.
I think so too. And rightly so, in some cases, because I've heard some terrible things about game companies and some shit that they have to go through in order to get these things done. Basically, unless you're an indie company working on your own, on your own schedule, you're not going to have, that kind of flexibility. So yes, you are having to work for deadlines, and yes, that can be terrible. I mean, look at people like manga artists and stuff. They have the same bullshit happen to them.
Yes.
It's not just the video game industry, and I know that doesn't justify it, but I'm saying this happens in every entertainment industry, in television, in music, in all these different avenues. So before anybody, bitches at Naughty Dog and says, well, you're pushing your people too hard, well, that's just, I hate to say it, but that's part of the entertainment industry. I know that doesn't justify it, but that's just part of it. But you're right. But as these games get more and more, realistic, you're having to spend more and more time on these animations that in the long run don't matter. In fact, I think a lot of people would probably be happy if they could skip those animations. And just do it. It's nice that they're in there, and yes, it does look great and everything like that, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that. But as far as I
am too.
And it's easy to, if you want to hate something, if you genuinely want to hate something, you will nitpick it to death. And if you can kill it before it even comes out, all the better for your argument.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. They were already mad. So, for example, and this is another thing, right? So think about how different the experience is, like learning about everything that happens in the game, like learning about Joel being bludgeoned and learning about Abby the hard way. I imagine that, if you just read that online as a link of spoilers, you probably would feel like that fucking sucked.
And see, that's the thing, because I've done that before. And I'll tell you, going back to Xenoblade Chronicles again, I know I keep doing that, but originally I read the Wikipedia article because I couldn't get my hands on the game initially, and I thought, oh, that's a cool concept or whatever. But then I played the game and I was like, holy shit, So there's a difference between getting it from. Well, it's kind of like what you said earlier about my whole novel idea for The Last of Us, which now is a terrible idea since you brought up that point. But
it's not terrible. I can see why you would want it.
But that kind of reinforces the point I'm making here, which is reading something and experiencing something.
Two very different things.
Even if it's, passive, like just watching it doesn't matter. At least you're experiencing it.
And plot points hit you different outside of the context of what's happening. Joel's bludgeoned to death. And by the way, so I'm gonna get into some criticisms that I have of the game. I'm gonna be real. It's one of my favorite games I've ever fucking played. I loved this game. I know you did too.
Yeah, I did too.
This game
but
was incredible.
There were issues.
Yeah, and there were issues, and we'll touch on those. But like outside of the context of a game, when you're not experiencing it the way that it's meant to be experienced, yeah, you're never gonna hit those dramatic notes if you know what's coming and you've already been criticizing it for the past how many months. Now, I'm not saying that everybody knew this. So, for example, like there's videos of fucking PewDiePie reacting about it on the internet and like not being happy the whole time, and it's like, if you didn't like Abby, whatever. If you didn't,
that's your prerogative.
Yeah, it's your prerogative. But it's like, damn, how much are you gonna fault someone for trying to do something different? Like every decision that they made was a hard decision to make.
Yeah, and they knew that going in.
And for the most part, they pulled it off. Like they did it.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to my point in apocalyptic fiction. It depends on who you start with. So I applaud them for actually giving the same amount of detail to Abby and her crew as much as they did with Ellie and Joel, because a lot of other game companies would have just made them the generic villains, and then that would have been it. But they took the time, to actually morph these people into characters. And the one thing I remember going in to kill Mel and Owen, as Ellie, and I was like, this goddamn dog keeps killing me because Alice kept killing me, and I was like, what the fuck, right? So, but then I turned around and I play Abby's character, and then I realized I killed this poor thing, and I killed these people.
Yeah, and by the way, after you shank the dog, they're like, fucking dog. And it's just like, she shits all over it.
She just kind of shits. But that's kind of the thing, right?
And I wanted to bring that up, too. You remember the part when you're going down in the stadium, and you see all the dogs, right? And then they give you that moment where you realize, it's like, oh, yeah, all these dogs are the ones that you've been fucking ruthlessly murdering. As you,
because you see them. Yeah, you see them in all the little pens and stuff, and they're being played with by the soldiers.
And when you're Ellie, if you don't kill those fucking dogs, they're gonna know where you're at.
They're gonna tear you up. Yeah. And did you notice that each of the dogs? I don't know if some of the names repeated, but like when you killed somebody or killed a dog, they would say their name. Like, because they actually had a name.
So, by the way, a lot of the people that are like, so as soon as I got done with the game, like, I didn't know about this dichotomy between the critic reviews and fan reviews. That hadn't hit me yet. So then, after I'm literally awestruck by the ending of this video game, I go and I look up reviews, and I see everyone just shitting all over this game. And a lot of the reasons why they are for some of the things that we just explained right now, because some of the criticisms is that Last of Us, it really beats you over the head with violence. So then like it makes you be violent, and then it says, oh, look how bad your violent actions were. Well, it's like, no shit, I was incentivized to be violent, right? But so. And I understand that, but again, to me, it goes back to, like, you would not have made this game any better if you had decided to put your own choices in it and make it different. No. Like, if you're gonna go around and start playing as the nice stealth kill person, and you want to like play that way, and every cutscene you're saving everyone's life. Like, you're at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to to deliver as much of an impactful story because these characters are just going to do whatever the fuck you want them to do. There would be no rhyme or reason to the through line of the story. So,
and that's the good part about this game, I think, is because the game doesn't let you pick those choices. Like, the divide between the gameplay and the story that you're hearing actually is a cohesive whole. Because I know some games where you can break that immersion by like, completely not playing the way you're supposed to, and then all of a sudden in the cutscene you're a completely different person. Well, this game forces you to be the same person play wise as you are in the cutscenes, which
Yeah.
is masterful in its own right. Uh, so yeah, I I don't this game
But you're right
makes
though.
me
Like even imagine at
yeah.
the end. So again, this is all we've blown spoilers out the window. But the last
Okay,
fucking
yeah, yeah.
the last thing that you are able to do and play is you're Ellie, and you have your hands now on Abby, and you're holding her underwater.
Yeah.
And essentially, at the very end, it looks like Abby's about to go unconscious and fucking drown. But Ellie
Mm-hmm.
decides not to and lets her go, and she lets Abby save Tev.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it goes back to what you said, Jeffrey. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if they had given you the option to kill her, then, okay, let's say they make a Last of Us 3. Well,
Right.
which one is it? Are you gonna?
Right.
Is the story gonna pick up after Abby's dead, or after
Right.
Abby's alive, or is it gonna
Right.
depend on what you did, or are you gonna just pick one and everyone else who chose the other option, well, they're just fucked, whatever.
Yeah, and
Like,
that's usually what happens. There's usually a canonical ending and alternate
right,
endings.
and then it's
And
like my ending doesn't matter anyway if I choose the
right,
wrong one. It
right.
doesn't it doesn't make sense. I don't understand this criticism of people that are being like, you should have had more choices in the game. But I'm like,
Well,
you're
because
missing the point. It's not that kind of game.
but every game almost to date is like that. I mean, think about the last
Right.
game prior to this that was so narrative driven that you couldn't make that choice. I can't even think of one, to be honest. I mean, other than RPGs, but those are kind of their own thing. I'm talking like shooters and shit. Like I mean, there's well, not even shooters, but like there's all these games what's that fucking Life is Strange, and stuff like that. Those choose your own adventure things, which are fine, but there's a time when the developers have their own story in mind, and they don't
Yes.
want player choice to be a thing, and
Right.
and it's like, well, and I don't get that because people are fine when they read books. They're like, okay, this is the writer's intent, and they're fine with it. But the minute it's a video game, I guess because you've had that interaction and you usually have that decision,
Yeah.
that it makes such an impact. But it's like sometimes a game needs to go a certain way, and you can't always be in control of everything that you do.
Yeah,
And
and again,
um,
the fact that we know that it's a
yeah,
game like that, and we accept that,
yeah,
and we're along for the ride that the developers are trying to tell, then
right,
I've already co-signed on that. I
right,
literally bought this game for the story that Naughty Dog and The Last of Us are
right,
trying to tell. Like that's
clearly,
why I bought this,
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so it's like I really I hate those criticisms, and then
I do too.
a lot of people are like, um, which again I just flat out disagree with this, that like the writing was lazy and that they made you, they kind of, in how we were talking about, there's so many mirroring aspects that
Hmm.
that it was easy to do and it wasn't well thought out and it was
That is such
weak and it's
bullshit.
so stupid because it's like oh, okay, what, like, one, no one has any answers for what should have been better, and
Right,
so I'm a big fan of the show Watchmen, and one of
right,
the episodes was titled, "If you don't like my story, write your own." And dude, that's
right.
the shit I'm on with this, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if your criticisms are the loudest ones I've seen is how
Hmm.
Joel dies
Hmm.
and playing Abby, which a lot of people can't stand Abby, which
Right.
fine,
Which
dude. If
I
you
don't
don't
understand.
like her, if you don't understand, that's fine, that's whatever.
Yeah.
But and saying that like it was easy for the story uh, they took the easy way out.
Actually, no.
None of those things make sense to me.
Right.
And I've already touched on the Joel thing. It's like
right.
it goes back to Game of Thrones. People die
Yep.
in tragic ways, specifically when the setting of your story is like a tragic post-apocalyptic future. Like, just because you're the
Yep.
main character doesn't mean that you get to be absolved of all the repercussions
Of everything.
of living in
'Cause-
that kind of world.
Right. And I think that's the other thing is like you were talking about the easy route. No, the easy route would have been for you to play as Ellie the whole time and for everything that she does to be justified.
Yes.
You know, they very easily could have, made it completely from Ellie's point of view, and then everything would have been fine. I've also been seeing some stuff on social media, especially with it being Pride Month this month,
Right.
about how they made the lesbian the bad guy, and I don't agree with that at all. Ellie, the actions that Ellie takes has nothing to do with her sexuality. In fact, if she would have followed her sexuality properly, she would have been with Tina, and none of this shit would happen.
Yeah, just be a happy lesbian out in the woods of Montana.
So the fact that her revenge and her sense of justification was so much more powerful than her love for another human being, regardless of the gender of that person, proves that in the end, she was a savage individual. It wasn't just because she's lesbian. She just happened to be one. Which,
yeah.
I mean, and I don't think that's a fair criticism at all.
Well, and that was another. So when the initial leaks went out of all the spoiler leaks, a lot of people were like, "Oh, they're injecting all the SJW shit into this about trans and lesbians and all this other shit." And which, by the way, I don't see it that way because none of it comes off.
I don't either.
Because it doesn't come off as preachy though. Like it comes off as these are just these people living in this world, and this is how they are, and they never try and hit you over the head with any kind of ideological bullshit. It's just these are the people, and this is how they're interacting in this world. And I feel like, especially with seeing how they handled everything, I felt that they did a good job. Let me ask you this: I didn't even. It didn't really even catch me at first that Trev was a trans character. Like that didn't. I don't know when it hit for people. Maybe it was when her sister tells the story about Trev, and I think that was probably when I picked up on it too. Or maybe I just kind of missed that conversation. I don't know, but I also feel like I didn't really even know, like. I originally thought Trev was a girl, and then later on I hear Abby refer to her as a him, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Right. And that's the thing. It's not really like thrown in your face. It's just kind of there. And I'm with you because at first I was like, that sounds like a girl, but I could have swore that they said he, and I'm like, well, what? But she was set up to marry one of the elders.
So again, I don't know why I feel like I missed that part of it, but it was essentially, and I could be wrong on this, but they were going to. She identifies as a he, but the tribe didn't. Yeah, but the tribe didn't give a shit, and they were going to marry her off.
Yes.
So. And again, another criticism that I have seen from the lefty kind of SJW people is that, well, okay, good job, you put a trans character in the game, but the only thing that's interesting about that character is that they are trans. So
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I was like, what the
hell? Again, it goes back to people are trying to find shit to be mad about this fucking game. and it's making them reach for shit.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, like, because so I don't know how to but there's representation on both sides now. So you've got Ellie as a lesbian, and you've got Tev as a transgender, and yes. It's again the whole mirror concept that we've kind of been alluding to throughout this whole thing, but it's I like how this game, like you said earlier, doesn't give you any definitive preachy moments, because even the fight with Sam, with Ellie and Sam, and the whole in called it that thing, which I personally think is wrong. The game doesn't tell you, oh, that's the wrong thing.
Yeah, because you don't know what it said, and you don't find out until later.
Right, you don't find out until later, and even then, they don't make a point of, this is your side and this is their side. It's whatever you think, and I think the same thing goes with the whole thing with Tev and religion in general, because religion is full of shit.
Right, and that's what they're trying to do. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say bash to shit, but like, it shows how ridiculous it can get, to the point where people are willing to like lay down their lives for a false goddess, essentially.
Right.
How religion is used to control people and the way that they feel and act and all that.
The worst of mankind.
And perpetuate the worst of mankind. And by far the worst people in this game are not even Ellie and Abby. It's the wolves, which technically Abby was a part of, but it's the wolves, the militaristic state of the wolves and these people, and the religious zealots on the other side, because that's the real war that's going on here. It's the war between the Seraphites, who they call the Scars because people have scars on their faces, and the military group here, and you're just kind of caught in the middle of it. When you're going through that village, you're seeing the war on both sides, and that's kind of the thing. You can pin them against each other and go through that entire section unnoticed until the very end. But yeah, there's so much shit here, dude.
Believe it or not, we actually have some comments in our chat from our mutual friend Josue. Shout out to my man Josue. He said, "What's up, you guys? Keep up the hard work. It doesn't matter if you have the best game franchise in the world. Critics are always going to find a way to say something's wrong with it. But fans are always going to have fans are always going to love the game for what it is." And I feel like that's a good point too, because it touches on. Okay, so one, let's say this. As of right now, it is the highest selling launch title of all time.
4 million copies sold already.
Yeah, dude, it's at 4 million. So, dude, Naughty Dog won. Okay, they got their money back. They got their money back. The critics reviewed it well. And another thing is, and I feel like we fall victim to this, especially being in internet culture, being online, being on Twitter and YouTube, seeing the opinion of everyone. Like, not everyone is on the internet. And sometimes most times, the loudest critics are the most few critics. So, like, for the most part, it's an action game that is fun. It's a fun action adventure game. You're going to be able to shoot people, shoot dogs, kill these infected, which we haven't even talked about, really.
All
the new infected, and that's a whole other thing in and of itself. Is that not only is it an action adventure game, but it's also a really good survival horror game.
Yeah, it's survival horror. It is.
Do you remember the parts at the end when you're in the buildings, and you find you find out that they grow into the walls? So
that scared the shit out of me.
They would just pop out of the fucking walls out of nowhere. And just and fucking attack you, and it's like that. In my opinion, is also when the game does some of its best work too, is putting you in these situations where, you're having to navigate out. I will say this, and this is a criticism. I feel like I forget what it's called, but I just call it the Eagle Vision, where you pretty much go into the mode where you can all the NPCs are in white and you can kind of
Yep.
see them move around. Your listening ability, that was
Yep.
overpowered to the point where
You
it's
can
like,
turn that off.
yeah, and
By the way,
you
you can
can,
turn that off.
and we haven't even touched on the disability options too, and maybe this is
Which we're about to,
yeah, so
so
this
don't
is a
worry
good
about that.
this is a good time to do it. But I feel like so here are some criticisms that I have that I feel are
Okay.
legitimate because no game is perfect.
Right.
Okay, once you figure it out and you figure out your best playstyle, the game is
Yep.
not hard to dominate.
No, it's not.
Even on some of the upper levels, it's once you figure it out, the AI for all the characters that roam around, they follow a pretty scripted pattern. And
I
once
do.
you know that script, it's kind of easy to just fuck them up. There's not a whole lot of, which I feel was kind of one of the selling points of the game. They marketed it as, the enemies kind of know and learn from each other if
Yeah.
something happens over here. But I never found that they were very smart. Like I always felt like I could maneuver around an area where there were a lot of people, be it scars or wolves or whatever,
Hmm.
that I could navigate the area pretty simple. And then
Right.
even if I got found, I could be hidden again pretty soon.
Yeah. It depends on the difficulty level, but
Right.
definitely yeah. Um, However, when they do spot you, and when the AI decides to work, because it
Right.
can, when you do get flanked, like if you're playing
Yeah.
on just like moderate difficulty, and you get shot 3 times, you're down.
Yeah.
So like
And they don't
it's
let you
not.
stand still.
No, they do not let you. That's the thing. You have to constantly keep moving. But as you said, once you figure out how the AI is scripted, and once you figure out, where you can and can't hide, and you learn the routes. Let's say you've died, once or twice. You learn the routes. You know where the bad guys are or can be at a given moment. So you just kind of go past them. And there was where I could just like flat out run, like flat out just run past everybody and
Yeah.
still make it through the
Yeah.
damn thing. So yeah, the AI
Yeah.
wasn't the greatest. What else did you have? Because that was one of
So
mine too.
another thing, and I'm getting this weird echo. I don't know where it's coming from. But another thing that I did notice, or that it's not that I noticed, but that I just didn't like. And I actually, now that I'm saying it, I want your opinion on it too. I
Okay.
think that they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. And so now, even as I'm saying it, I'm doubting myself. But like, one of the story things that I felt that, I mean, it wasn't bad. I just felt like maybe they could have done it better. Was um, when you play Abby early, so you know how
Yeah.
right before you see Joel and them, you get to
Yeah.
play as Abby
You
and you
play as
see her
Abby.
talking
Yeah.
with Owen. So
Right.
what I'm like, I think it would have been even far more impactful when you finally played Abby later on if you had never played as her before.
Right.
So I feel
I
like
think that.
they kind of basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like they telegraphed their big twist a little too early, and
Yeah, they did.
it's not really a twist when you realize that, oh yeah, I get to play her again. Well, that's why they let me play her earlier.
The first
I
time.
feel like maybe
Right.
that they could have done that a little bit better and not have you
Yeah.
play her so early.
Well, I know what they were trying to do. They were. It's a foreshadowing thing, right? Like you were saying, they, it's it's not that they wanted you to know that you could play Abby later on, but they um they wanted people to be able to catch it. So like they they were like, oh, let's strap her here. So you know maybe when you finally get the chance to do it, maybe it won't be a surprise. But then again, they were trying foreshadowing. I don't know how else to say that, but like they were attempting to like make it mysterious, but not at the same time. They were trying to like make a nod to it, so that
Yeah,
clever people, quote unquote, would be able to pick that up. But I think
yeah,
everybody picked it up, which is kind of, you know,
Well, and I
pointless
think that they
in that sense.
also, I kind of think that they also wanted to have that moment where you're about to die, and then Joel ends up being the one to save her, which is
Yeah,
also
yeah.
kind of fucked up considering that
I don't.
that Joel saved her, and then because she was the one that ended up killing her dad. It's like, no, you still
Right,
gotta fucking die.
right,
Um, and then again, like I also, it's not like Abby is without fault either. It's like, how are you gonna
right,
blame this girl? You killed Joel in front of her, and you know that you did, and you're gonna be
right.
mad at her when she decides to come back and fuck up your people.
I
Like
mean,
it's
what?
like the same criticisms that you kind of had for Ellie. They also do in a way go to
Yeah,
Abby as well.
it's like why not just kill Ellie?
Yeah,
Well, I think the main reason was probably because she knew that Ellie was immune. So, and she's a doctor too, and I don't think that is. Um, I mean, it's brought up, but she's a doctor like her father is, and maybe she was hoping, I don't know, to
right.
get Ellie on her
Maybe
side,
she's
maybe or
maybe she still
something.
had hope that, or maybe she
Right.
felt like if she ends up killing the only person that has
Then
blood that
humanity is
fights it off,
fucked. Yeah.
yeah, by killing this person that just killed all of your people, like now you're
Right.
dooming everyone, And I get
Right.
that that's how the stories mirror each other because that's
Right.
the same decision that Joel made. So
Right.
I don't know, man. It's I don't
Yeah.
have
It's
yeah.
it's crazy.
I don't have too many criticisms of it. Oh, I did want to mention this to you. And it kind of dawned on me as I started to pick them up. Did you get so? Were you collecting the superhero cards?
I love those damn things.
I love them
Uh,
too, and it has me wondering if maybe Naughty Dog intends to tap into that universe
I
some
certainly
point
hope
later
so.
on down the road. That might be fucking cool.
I certainly hope so. So, for people who don't know what we're talking about, there's this in-game, uh, like sci-fi fantasy universe. There are a bunch of comics, but they're also like collectible trading card things.
Well,
Um,
and they're playing cards too because they have
and they're
stats on
playing
the
cards,
back of
yeah,
them.
because they all have stats like fucking like Magic the Gathering and shit.
Yeah.
Uh, but like they all, each of these superheroes and villains have their own backstory. Uh, Kind of reminds me of anything that DC or Marvel might even put out.
hmm
Um, it kind of even had that same attention to detail. Like I don't know any other company that would like literally like go out of the way to like make characters and
Well,
backstories for
and like
you know.
if I would love because Naughty Dog, they're really good at putting things in there like from prior games,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
putting them in. So, for example, like in the last Uncharted, you could see Crash Bandicoot playing.
yes.
Did you find the precursor orb? But did you ever play the original Jack games? The Jack
Uh,
and Daxter games?
no, I never got around to
Oh,
them.
they're so good, dude. I'm a lifelong. Maybe that's why I'm a little biased too. I love Naughty Dog forever. Like the first game I ever got on my PlayStation was Crash Bandicoot and
Yeah,
Parappa the
Krantz, I did.
Rapper.
Yeah, that was me too.
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot and Parappa the Rapper were my first two games on PlayStation.
Oh, there you go, dude.
But
Yeah,
they had this precursor. The precursor orbs are a big deal in the original, and all the Jack games. And you actually find a precursor orb in this Last of Us 2.
oh, that's
Yeah, it's
cool.
like a collectible item. And there's one point in
Cool.
time, I think it's when you're playing, I forget if it's with Ellie or Abby, but you're in the arcade and they have
Uh-huh.
Jack X Combat Racing. And that was a
Oh,
real, yeah, that was a real
that's a
game.
cool game. I know that. I
That
knew
came
that
out.
one.
I love that too. And so, but the fact that Naughty Dog does like to reference their other titles, it
Yeah,
does make me think, oh, wouldn't that be badass if, because, yeah, okay, if this is the final Last of Us game, like, dude,
yeah,
I think that's a perfect ending. Like, I
it
mean,
is.
a lot of these zombie stories, which I
Have
am going to
terrible
consider it
endings.
a zombie story, but not only do they have terrible endings, but they never even make it a point to solve the outbreak or tell you how it's
Right,
going to end or whatever. So
right,
it's like, hell, The Last of Us 2 might as well not either and just,
right.
leave it right there. I honestly don't know. I mean, for money purposes, there's probably going to be another one just because it made
Yeah, but
so
how
much
could they
money.
do it is what you're wondering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I would almost prefer that they moved on to something different. And
Yeah, me
wouldn't that
too.
be cool if it was that entire world that you're reading about in those superhero cards?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with that.
Those
And I really,
alliances and stuff. It's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they could easily like, I don't know, make a superhero like brawler, or maybe even some. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things they could do with
Yeah,
that.
the possibilities
But
are endless for them to be able to do something cool.
that's really neat. I love all that extra little detail.
Me too.
Um, which actually incentivized me to go exploring, because in a lot of
Yeah,
these games, like, I just tend to go from one story beat to another, especially in a game like this where I wanted to do that
yeah.
because I wanted to know. But this kind of stuff forced me to stop and actually made me get
Explore.
valuable supplies that I
Yeah.
needed for crafting as well. So it's a really risk, or a really good reward system in a way, because you get a lot of extra stuff, but you also get the essential shit you need to survive as well. So it
All the commemorative coins of the
yeah,
different states that you could pick up.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
definitely a lot of
Which
cool things to find.
which leads me to our other big point
Yeah.
of the podcast. I personally I have 15/20 vision in my left eye, which is fantastic. It's better than normal. But in my right eye, I'm 40/20, which
Oh,
means
okay.
I'm virtually almost legally blind. But I think because of my left eye, I can't be considered
It
that.
kind
But
of
I
compensates or
digress.
something. Yeah.
I also I also have mixed hearing loss in both ears. Uh, the tube that goes from my ear to my inner nose, or from my nose from my nose to my inner ear. Good God, I can't talk today. Um, is a lot more narrow than most people's.
Yeah.
So mine tends to fill up with fluid, and I actually have trouble hearing certain things, or hearing voices under a certain timbre. Um, and this is where we're going to get into the accessibility options,
Yeah.
because Jesus Christ, there's over 60 of them. I'm telling you now, and we're not going to go through all 60 of them, but I do want to highlight the ones that I use.
Yes.
So the the accessibility options are actually broken down into broader categories. So there is one specifically for motor function and control. As you know, Cody and I both have very limited use of our hands.
Right.
So this this includes things like like oh God, what did we? Okay, so like for me, like I said, I have trouble seeing shit.
Yes.
So like there's an option where you can just automatically pick up stuff as you run over it
Yeah.
instead of having to press a button. Um, there are there are some visual aids. So like you were talking about with the scanning thing, there's a thing called enhanced listening, which actually allows you to do more than see enemies. You can ping items the same way you do enemies. So you could ping a room, and it will show you where all those items are.
Yeah. So one of the
So
things that I would do, and I didn't do it the whole thing. I just did it when I was playing around with the settings because I knew that we would do this show. Um,
yep,
I so I used my quad stick. I could hook up my quad stick to the PlayStation. It's this right here. It helps me to play shooters better. And some of the things that I did was I made it where. So what I would do is I would go through the level normal, and I would just go and get the ambiance and
yep,
play. But then what I would do is you can, and I don't remember exactly what it's called. I changed a few different things, but what I did was once I cleared out the level, I would make it so that every item would stand out in yellow. So
yeah,
instead of me having to go around and search for everything, which I did do also, but just to
right,
speed up the amount of time that it was taking, because I also wanted to beat the. I didn't know. Me and Jeffrey didn't know if I was going to have the game beaten before we did
yeah,
the show today. So one of the ways that I wanted to speed up that process was I wanted to find all the items that I could and just
yep,
get in and get out. Now
yeah,
I ended up not keeping with it because I didn't I didn't want to. I didn't want to keep turning it off and on, even though it was real easy to do. But it definitely helped, and I have no problem with my vision or my hearing. But for people that needed it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Man, they have now set the gold standard for what it means to make your video game accessible for people of all different kinds of abilities, both hearing and vision and physically. Like, I mean, going forward, the entire industry in both America and Japan and wherever else they make games, they need to take lead from Naughty Dog and what they did in The Last of Us 2. I mean, it's incredible.
There's simple things. There's stuff like being able to tap a button instead of holding it down to aim, or better yet, which is something I actually used in previous games as well. Because actually, this isn't the first game. We should mention this. This isn't the first game to have accessibility options that Sony has put out. The first game that I noticed was God of War 4. They actually had an accessibility tab, much like this one, but it was very limited. So, like, you had things for, like, being able to hold a button down instead of rapidly pressing it, which this game has
which
as well.
I love. And by the way, I hope every game going forward does, man. You know how much... Dude, they're, like, I remember early back in the... Like, playing the original God of Wars, I used to hate button mashing. Yeah, man, it sucks. Like, I mean, you really don't realize unless you're disabled. But small stuff like that matters, man, because you'll be in the middle of a game, and if something like that comes up, and let's say you're really into the game, you're enjoying it, and then this one part comes up that you have a fucking hard time doing, maybe even impossible time doing, and you either have to get someone to come do it for you, or you just have to not play anymore because you can't get past that one part. So the fact that they let you do this is awesome.
Yeah. And there's things like auto aim where you can, aim your weapon and it'll automatically target the body. But then you can flip the right analog stick up and it'll automatically go to the head, which it's still not 100% accurate though. So like your weapon still sways and shit. So you have to hit it at the right moment. But
go ahead.
The fact that I don't have to sit there and perfectly align the stick, and I can focus more on when to press the button at the right time was much better. I should mention, I played an entire part of this game completely blind. I blindfolded myself, and I made it through. So, there's this thing called assisted navigation traversal, which I did do, and it was toward the very beginning of the game, and I replayed it again, with the blindfold off. So it's not like I missed a part of the game. Don't worry. There is this thing called navigation and traversal, and and if you have advanced navigation turned on, if you click in the left stick, it will automatically turn the camera in the way that you're supposed to go for your objective. So like you don't even have to worry about the way the camera is positioned. If you use the enhanced listening features like I did, you know where the enemies are, and like the audio cues, you can even tell when they're pinged, like how close they are to you.
Yeah.
So you can, navigate around that way. Whenever you reach a certain milestone in the level, so if you click in that left stick, you can move forward a certain amount. And if you move forward as much as the game deems necessary, it will ding at you to tell you, okay, you're at the specific location we need you to be at.
Yeah.
And there's things, like I said, like auto picking up things, so you don't even have to worry about whether you've actually, missed something.
So I turned on that. I turned on, you can change the color of your HUD, which the HUD's very minimal. But you can change it to yellow, blue. I just left it on white. I made it where you didn't have to button mash. I made it where you all you had to do was just like hover over stuff to pick it up. You didn't have to push a button. Not because I couldn't, just because it was a time saver, just to be able to go over and just pick everything up. And I did the lock on thing. Yeah, dude, there was so many, and then there was stuff. Then I didn't even get to everything. Like there was stuff that
I didn't either.
yeah, there was stuff I probably should have turned on, but didn't. And I actually, to tell you how much I enjoyed this game, I probably am gonna play through it again and do the new game plus with all the new ammo and stuff and all the upgrades
And
I had for
that's
my last
exactly what I'm
file.
gonna do. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. But I mean, there are even for the severely handicapped, like motor skill wise, there are some amazing settings in here. I didn't have to use any of these, but they are here. So like combat accessibility, you have you have things like when you grab onto somebody like from behind, they can't escape, or the enemies don't flank you at all. So like they'll come in one after the other. You have enhanced dodge, which is essentially you can just keep dodging over and over and over again and not have to worry about timing. You've got things like fucking slow motion, where you can literally like slow the game down to a damn crawl in order to get that perfect shot or to get from one area to the other without being surprised. There's all the you know what? We're just gonna put the damn link in the description, and you
Yeah.
guys can read this damn chart for yourself because it is so damn extensive. To cover this in its entirety would be its own podcast. That's how big this damn thing is. I'm serious.
Yeah, it really
I
is
mean,
crazy.
um,
My cripple ass didn't even touch on everything that I probably should have and probably would have made it a little bit easier
yeah,
for me. I mean, really, man. And again, I'm happy now that we live in a day and age where people but not even just people, specifically these developers that make
yeah,
these games
yeah,
understand how important they are to people like us who don't have the opportunity to go out and do things as much as your average everyday person.
yeah,
Video games are a huge part of our life. That's why we
yeah,
made this podcast. Like when you grow up as a handicapped individual, video games are some of the easiest things that you can do. And it's
yeah,
inclusive, man. You can go online and play. Video games are for everyone, but
right,
you increase your market when you make them
right,
for everyone because it means that now when you show me that you care about my ability to play this game, you damn right I'm gonna continue to support Naughty Dog in all their
right,
future endeavors.
yeah,
The fact that you have acknowledged me and how I play video games means that now I'm a loyal fan, and I always have been before, but now even more so.
Well, I mean, and not only that, but I mean, there are plenty of able people that even have trouble
That
with
are
some of
just
this shit.
stupid and they need help.
Yeah, that just go on with the shit like the button mashing thing. For example, like I remember the first God of War, for example, my brother who's completely able-bodied had to do it a few times to get the damn Hydra head to split. You
Yeah,
know, there's all these different things, and now I mean, yes, people could use them and totally take advantage of the system and make the AI dumb as shit and, do whatever they have to do to get through. But the fact that that's even a possibility now is the fact that I don't have to go out and get a turbo controller, or a third party controller
yeah,
just to play a game now is
yeah.
amazing. Because I remember for every previous console, I had to make a point to go get a turbo controller or something of the equivalent just because I knew there might be a game that would require some finagling that the designers didn't think of. Um, and then Naughty Dog put out a tweet before this game even came out where they purposely set out to make this the most accessible game ever made.
Yeah.
And I think that they have, I'd say, not only have they achieved their goal, they've knocked it out of the park. So
Yeah, man.
everybody that comes after them, if they don't have these or at least something close to it, they're gonna look like dumb shits.
Yeah, and it's gonna look like you don't care. And by the
Yeah,
way, like that's another thing where I'm kind of torn because like hearing stories about the amount of time and effort that went into making this game and all of the people that were at Naughty Dog like all
yeah.
hours of the night.
It does make me wonder how much of that time was spent on these options.
Well,
Because
yeah,
I
and then it's like,
guarantee you,
man, all of that shit paid off, and it's like
it did.
I'm in no position to critique, the working conditions of Naughty Dog employees.
Right.
Like, I don't know, maybe they're fucking terrible, but I do know this: for everything that they did, they made it easier for a large swath of people. I mean,
Right.
you're talking millions of people around the world that are going to play this, that are disabled, that are going to be able to enjoy this and play this because of the work and the
Right.
decision that they made, which, by the way, I'm sure is very time consuming. I'm sure it's very expensive to do because time is money and money is time. And this is another game that also was delayed, and that's another reason why it's like when games are delayed, I'm never mad at it, even though
I'm not angry at them.
even though I might be disappointed that I'm not able to play it as soon as it might have otherwise been. I understand the level of care and detail to make sure that everything is perfect. Like if you rush to launch, and the
it's a buggy mess.
Or like one of the pinnacles of what you want to do is make this game so accessible, but yet you're gonna need time to make it that accessible. Then it's like, if you're trying to make it a milestone video game for disabled people, it takes a lot of time and money that they had to sink into this. Like they had to bet on themselves that it would be worth it to do it.
Yeah.
And it was worth it to do it.
I think so. But then again, we're disabled, so I mean it.
Right,
it
but hey, we're the only ones that fucking matter in this discussion. Yeah, because we're able to play it because they made those decisions to do that.
Yeah, and I probably would have been able to play this game without them, but that's because I'm fortunate enough to have a good enough use of my hands. But even then, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as thoroughly as I did with all these options available to me. That especially when it comes in terms of like collectibles and picking shit up, because I'm always missing shit. I have to go back and get stuff, and I don't know about you, and maybe this was just the way my sound settings were, but there was a lot of like mumbling and soft talking in this game at a lot of points. I had trouble hearing. Thank God for the large ass subtitles that I could put on there. Not only were there subtitles, but there were like color coded subtitles. So like I knew who was speaking without even looking at the name. I could see the color. Yeah, and it was really cool. And like these damn subtitles were fucking huge. I mean, like ginormously huge.
And there's just such a wide variety of disability, man. It's like, hey, it's like what you were saying. Maybe you didn't need that to play, but it's like, I don't need to eat a bag of chips in the afternoon, but I like it when I have them. It helps out everybody, and for every one of you that could have been able to play it on their own, there's like so many more that did need those options.
I know plenty of people like that. So it's just great that they will actually be able to experience this to the fullest if they pick the game up. And the other credit to Naughty Dog that kind of goes along with the same thing is that difficulty and trophies are not affected by these accessibility options.
This is
so you can play the game to its fullest on the hardest difficulty with all these settings enabled and not be punished for it. Because like most games, like the Resident Evil 2 remake, for example, to have that lock-on aim, you had to play on the easiest difficulty. You don't here, which is a credit to Naughty Dog and how they were able to not only design all these systems, but then design all these systems in tandem with the difficulty itself. So that's an achievement. I can't even imagine how much that took. But God, there's just, you all need to go play this fucking game. Okay, that's
yes, it's incredible, man.
And
go ahead.
One or two other tiny, well, it's actually one tiny thing, but it goes for both of them. Thank you, Naughty Dog, for allowing us, who bought the deluxe edition, to be able to take our damn soundtrack and put it on our iPods. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. So I didn't get the deal. I was like a
Yeah,
last minute purchase thing for me.
yeah, I got the deluxe edition. They got the soundtrack and the art book, and you can actually export those and put those on your PC or
Nice.
your thing of choice without any restrictions. So it's not like you can only download it once. No, you can download it as much as you
Yeah.
had that
Didn't you say that
installed.
it was like
So
Square Enix that didn't let you
yeah,
put in
Square
the
Enix
other
did that shit.
shit?
And by the way, this is a whole damn soundtrack. It's not a mini soundtrack like Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. Right.
You even have that kick ass those two songs. You've got Ellie's version of "Take on Me," which I thought was brilliant. Did you get to that
No,
part where she?
no, I didn't.
It's a little side thing where she picks up the guitar and starts playing, but she actually sings the entirety of "Take on Me,"
Ah,
which
that's
is like
cool.
one of my favorite songs. One of my older favorite songs.
Yeah.
And then that ending
Oh yeah, I
song.
do remember that now. I don't know what I'm talking. Yeah, I do. I remember thinking about like, is that Take On? It is Take On
Yeah,
Me.
it's
Yeah.
"Take on Me," and then it's also got that kick-ass or the ending song we were talking about with her and Joel together, and that was the cool thing. Like I was doing something at the time those credits were rolling, so I wasn't really paying attention to the lyrics. But then that night, I listened to the soundtrack on my iPod, and I was like, "Oh shit!" That's a whole other thing.
Yep.
So just thank you all around to Naughty Dog for the accessibility. This is on all fronts. This is one of not only the greatest games I've ever played narratively, but one of the most accessible and mechanically sound games I think I've ever played. Um, I I don't know what else to say.
I really don't know either, man. I feel like Naughty Dog had a lot of mouths to feed when they
Yeah,
made this. Not only was the Last of Us one of the best reviewed games of all time, people consider
yep.
that a masterpiece. The fact that they even decided to make another one, which by the way, that's another thing. Like it made me disappointed because I never finished The Last of Us one. I had played
Mhm.
through a good bit of it, and then I didn't get a chance to finish it, and it makes me like
Right.
disappointed that I didn't because
Yeah.
it's like, man. I mean, then I wonder how different I would feel about Joel's death. I don't think I would, but I mean,
See,
yeah,
I loved Joel in the first, even after he did what he did. I loved him, and the thing is, like, he's also voiced by Troy Baker, who's like one
yeah,
of
everybody, yeah, all those
one
guys
of
are
the
like
greatest voice artists
legends. Yeah,
out there
yeah,
right now. So like, I respect not only the character of Joel, but the voice actor behind him. So I was really in Joel's corner because at that point I really liked Ellie. Well, this game made me dislike Ellie because not 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 it just made everything more human. Whereas before it was like, okay, you're on a roller coaster ride with Joel and Ellie in the first one. This one actually stopped and
yeah.
gave her character development.
Well, and I feel
And
like
was
you just made another really good point there too. It's that a lot of this criticism, if again, if you played the first one, you have a deep love of Joel and Ellie,
right.
and it's almost like you love them so much that you feel a bit of connection that maybe a lot of people also feel like Ellie came out looking like a bitch in this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now they're like, no, I liked Ellie, and now you made me dislike her. But again, man, like from a
But I
narrative
liked
perspective,
that.
yeah, me too. And I like the narrative perspective. And again, like I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones. I've read all the books. I love the shows up until the bullshit ending
Ending apparently.
of
I
that.
haven't
Which,
seen it. Don't tell
oh
me.
god, it's so fucking bad. But it's one of those things where, and I like how George R. R. Martin always says that there's the best characters are in the gray area. Like they're not
Yeah.
really good. They're not really
Yeah.
bad. They're good. They're people, but everybody's done some fucked up shit.
Yeah.
And sometimes a character's arc will take you from liking that character to being like, oh well, no, they made some bad decisions, and now they're kind
Yeah.
of a shithead. So, for example,
Yeah.
like Breaking Bad, you could love Walter White at the start of it when he's the good guy, but then by
but
the
he's a
time,
piece of shit.
yeah,
Yeah,
but then by the time he's Heisenberg, yeah, he's a
yeah,
fucking asshole now. So
yeah.
I don't mind. Like, I think the problem is a lot of fans, and really this goes for no matter what you're talking about, Star
Right, right.
Wars, Final Fantasy,
Mhm.
Game of Thrones, you're taking ownership with a lot of these characters that you come to love, and then
Mhm.
when the decision makers make decisions that you don't like, you feel
Right.
betrayed by them. And and
Yeah.
and so I understand that maybe a lot of the criticism of the game comes from like a sense of betrayal because it's like, and again, this is valid. You're allowed to feel this way, but like, if you loved Ellie and then you play this game to have Ellie as the main protagonist, only
Mhm.
to end up hating her as her character regresses in some senses, but
Right.
then you don't play as Ellie for a large majority of the game. So I
Right.
understand how people did get pissed off, and that, like I
Right.
said, there are legitimate criticisms, but
Mhm.
overall, it just feels so nitpicky to me, you know?
It
And
does.
and I really felt, and you and I both did, but we went into doing this podcast really feeling some type of way about this, man.
Right.
This game moved us to many different emotions,
Yeah.
and I feel they executed on all of those as well as they possibly could have.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Uh, two tiny things. Um,
Two more
this
tiny
is
things. All right, we're
this
good. Let's
is
do it.
this is the first game I've ever seen a sex scene in. um, like a
Two of them
legitimate
at
scene.
that.
Um, there was, the whole thing between Owen and Abby. Like they actually like, I mean, it wasn't anything worse than you'd see in like Game of Thrones, but it was there. That kind of shocked me.
Oh, well, you would
Sort
say a
of.
lot worse than Game of Thrones. A lot more
Um,
hardcore nudity than that,
well, I
but
mean,
yeah.
like, I was just surprised that they again, it was nothing like terribly gratuitous. It wasn't like it wasn't like full on hardcore or anything, but like
No.
it was there. So
Yeah.
just be prepared for that.
It's an adult title, man.
Yeah.
And
Um,
so another, and I guess we can kind of finish it on this because it goes into those criticisms too. Um, Neil Druckmann, the producer of the game,
yeah.
got a lot of heat because he was saying that he wasn't going for like they're not going for fun. They're more of getting you to engage and experience,
Yes.
which is
Yeah.
stupid because inevitably the game is fun,
The
and
game is
and they're not gonna sell a game that isn't fun to play. So it's kind of it was a weird thing to say anyway. But I also feel
yeah.
that comes with some of the backlash in that they wanted to deliver a specific experience, and they
Yeah.
did not care if you liked their decision on what kind of experience they were delivering to you.
Yeah.
And I applaud them for that, man.
Yeah.
Because
And
when you yeah,
go ahead.
I'll say
Go
this
ahead.
last thing and then I'll pass the mic. When you have the reins to a beloved franchise like that, it's like we were saying, man. People take ownership over the
Yeah.
characters. I mean, look at the amount of backlash that all the Star Wars movies
Oh yeah.
receives from the fans that just hate every new decision that they make. You
Which
know,
I like. But
yeah,
I'm in the
but
minority.
either
But
hey, love it or hate it, it takes balls to know that the decisions that you're gonna make risk alienating an entire
yeah.
portion of your existing fan base. Man, that takes courage.
Yeah.
And I was into it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Me too.
I thought they
Um,
did well, man.
and part of this is because of that story, because it is so detailed. But this game is long, for a shooter especially. It's about 15, 16 hours long, and that's if you don't get everything. If you like scour all the environments and stuff, you're looking about 25 hours of gameplay, which for something like an RPG would be a laugh in the face, but for a third person shooter, that's a pretty hefty
Yeah.
amount of time. Because every time I was like, okay, surely the game is done now, and then it wasn't. It just kept going, and I was like,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily a criticism, but there's plenty of points where this game could have just stopped, and it didn't. It kept going and it kept pushing, and it ultimately got to that ending that I think a lot of people were dissatisfied with, because I expected and I imagine a lot of people thought that the game would have ended when Ellie got to the farm the first time.
Yes.
But it kept going, and that in itself takes balls. But just be aware of that too. This isn't like some jaunt in the park. You're going to have to spend about double or at least double and a half the time you would with a normal shooter in order to finish this game. So length is something to be considered, just so you know.
Yeah, it is. It's a long game. It's a full experience. And again, this leads into another conversation. Is like, especially with video game industry practices now being more scrutinized, kind of how we talked about, like, how much longer do we have these big, long, drawn out, beautiful games before the industry starts to try and pivot for both financial reasons and practical reasons. I don't know. It's a weird time. All I can say is
they're already starting to talk about that. They're starting to talk about how the companies are actually losing money by making these long ass games when they could be charging a shit ton more for it. So when people bitch about a $60 or $70 game, you guys need to be happy, because trust me, they could be a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Which in itself could be another topic for another podcast.
Well, it might be that in this next console cycle, if they don't change things, we could end up seeing $70 or $80 games. I mean, who knows? Anything is possible. But Jeffrey, we've just done a 2-hour plus podcast.
Oh my god, 2 hours!
And dude, man, we said that's what we were gonna do. Because we knew coming into this that both of us had a lot to say. We both had a lot of feels for this game and how it played out and the criticisms and the backlash, the gameplay. I think we did a really good job kind of touching on all those things today, man.
I hope so.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the continued discourse about Last of Us 2 and any news that comes from it going forward. But great episode today, and I'm just now realizing, or I kind of realized halfway through the podcast, that even though I renamed it, it's still saying episode 11 instead of 12, and it has the old title. So inevitably, I'm probably going to have to take this episode down and re-upload it with the proper title. But that's fine. We're going to do it because we love to sit here and bullshit about video games. I do it with my partner, Jeffrey Redmond. Jeffrey, tell them where they can find you online, bro.
I'm actually discontinuing my Facebook. I'm going to keep that for my friends and family. So anybody who wants to contact me any other way can do it on Twitter. Yeah. That's at JeffroRed. That's JEFFRORED.
Good move. That's what I do. That's what a lot of people do. Kind of keep Facebook for the closest people, and then Twitter is kind of your at-large persona. Yeah. I did that, man. My name is Cody Lash, and you can find me on Twitter at CODYLAC, Cody Lack. You can hit me up and bullshit with me about just about anything. Make sure you hit the like button on the video.
Please.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to continue to do this and grow a fan base and grow what we do and continue to have these great discussions. So make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell for whenever we go live on the Cripple Connection podcast. My name is Cody Lashney. That was Jeffrey Redmond. Until next time, people, peace and love.
Peace.